The Galactic Central Assembly Hall floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure orbiting the dead star Kepler 186. Inside its great chamber, representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats. The room was designed like an ancient amphitheater, with rows rising up in circles around a central speaking floor. Light filtered through the dome above, casting shadows across the assembled delegates. Minjun Park stood alone on that central floor. He was the human ambassador, and today he carried the weight of 8 billion souls on his shoulders. His hair had turned gray during his 15 years of service to Earth. The lines on his face told stories of countless meetings, arguments, and disappointments. "Honorable delegates," Minjun said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I stand before you one final time to ask you to reconsider the human containment protocol. This blockade around our solar system is not just. It punishes my people for crimes we have not committed." In the highest seat, High Chancellor Vorn watched with ancient eyes. His species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. His scaled face showed no emotion as the humans spoke. Counselor Thexera, whose feathered crest rose and fell with her breathing, clicked her beak in what her species considered laughter. "Ambassador Park speaks of justice, but his people know nothing of peace. Humans have been part of our community for only 50 years. In that time, your species has shown nothing but aggression and territorial expansion." Minjun felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. "We have followed every rule you set for us. When you asked us to limit our colonial expansion, we agreed. When you demanded we share our technology, we complied. When you restricted our trade routes, we accepted. But this blockade will slowly kill our people. We need resources from outside our system to survive. Perhaps your species should have thought of that before showing your true nature," another delegate called out. The speaker was from the Zelthian Confederacy, a species that had never trusted humans from the start. Minjun looked around the chamber. He saw fear in many eyes, but also something worse: indifference. Most of these species had decided long ago that humanity was too dangerous to exist freely among the stars. They had made their choice, and nothing he said would change their minds. 50 years ago, everything had been different. When the galactic community first made contact with Earth, there had been celebration. Humanity had finally found others among the stars. The first meetings were full of hope and promise. Earth opened its doors, shared its culture and knowledge. Humans were eager to learn and grow, but that optimism faded quickly. Other species began to see human traits as threats. Humans adapted too quickly to new technology. They asked too many questions. They challenged old traditions. When human colonies began spreading to nearby systems, whispers started. "They expand like a virus," some said. "They cannot be controlled," others claimed. The truth was simpler and sadder. Humanity was different, and difference bred fear. The great species of the galaxy had spent millennia creating their perfect order. Humans did not fit into that order. They were too unpredictable, too creative, too stubborn. 3 months ago, the Assembly had voted. The Human Containment Protocol passed with 32 votes in favor, only 8 against, and 7 abstentions. An energy barrier would be placed around Earth's solar system. No ships would enter or leave. The official reason was quarantine for galactic security. Everyone knew what it really meant. Humanity was being locked away, isolated until they either changed or slowly died out. "The vote has already been taken," High Chancellor Vorn said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "This debate serves no purpose. The blockade is now in place. It will remain until the Assembly determines that humanity has learned to control its aggressive impulses." Minjun closed his eyes for a moment. He had known this would be the outcome. His government had known it too. That was why they had prepared an alternative solution. He had argued against it in private meetings. He had believed in diplomacy, in the power of words and reason. But standing here now, seeing the cold dismissal in their eyes, He understood the truth. Some people only listened when they had no other choice. I am disappointed, Minjun said softly. I believed that the galactic community was built on principles of fairness and mutual respect. I see now that I was wrong. You have judged us without giving us a real chance. You have sentenced us to slow death because we frighten you. Is there anything else, Ambassador? Thexra asked, her tone making it clear. She wanted him to leave. Just one thing, Minjun replied. When future generations look back on this moment, they will ask why war came to these halls. I want you all to remember that we tried. We came in peace. We followed your rules. We asked for mercy. You gave us none. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others looked confused by his words. High Chancellor Vorn leaned forward slightly. Is that a threat, Ambassador? No, Chancellor, Minjun said. It is a statement of fact. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the chamber flickered. A low alarm began to sound throughout the station. Delegates looked around in confusion. Endoris, station security officers spoke urgently into their communication devices. A technician rushed to Vorn's side and whispered in his ear. The ancient reptilian's eyes widened. He stood from his seat, something he rarely did. What is happening? Thexra demanded. Vorn's voice was tight with tension. Multiple vessels have just appeared on our sensors. They were hidden somehow, but now their stealth fields have dropped. They are surrounding this station. What vessels? Another delegate shouted. Who dares approach the assembly without permission? The technician's hands shook as he worked his console. The main display screen activated, showing the space around the station. Dozens of ships floated in formation, their weapons powered but not yet firing. They were sleek, efficient designs that emphasized function over decoration. Minjun looked up at the screen. His face showed no surprise. Those are human ships, Thexra said, her voice rising to a screech. The humans have brought their military to our doorstep. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded answers. Others called for immediate counterattack. Security officers drew their weapons, though they seemed unsure who to point them at. Through it all, Minjun Park stood quietly on the central floor. He thought about his wife back on Earth, his daughter studying medicine in Seoul, his son who served in the human fleet. He thought about all the people counting on him to save them. I told you, he said quietly, though nobody was listening anymore. I told you. We tried. The alarms grew louder as proximity warnings joined the chaos. The human fleet was moving closer. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the command chair of the HMS Defiant, watching her tactical display with calm eyes. Around her, bridge officers worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this mission for months, knowing that one mistake could mean war or the death of their species. All ships report ready, Admiral, her communications officer said. Sarah took a deep breath. She was 53 years old and had spent 30 years in Earth's naval forces. She had fought pirates in the outer colonies, rescued stranded mining crews, and explored unknown systems. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this moment. Today, humanity would either earn its freedom or die trying. Open a channel to the station, she ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies. A tone sounded, indicating the channel was open. Every screen in the assembly station would now show her face. Every delegate would hear her words. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. We have surrounded your station with 42 warships. Our weapons are armed, but we do not wish to fire them. However, we will defend ourselves if attacked. We demand immediate removal of the blockade around Earth's solar system. You have 1 hour to begin dismantling the barrier. If you refuse, we will dismantle it ourselves. She paused, knowing her next words were crucial. We do not seek war. We seek only what should have been given freely. The right to exist among the stars without chains. Make your choice. Inside the assembly chamber, chaos had already begun. Now it reached a fever pitch. Delegates screamed at each other. Some tried to flee toward the exits, only to find them sealed by security protocols. High Chancellor Vorn stood at his seat, trying to restore order by slamming his staff against the floor. Counselor Thexra's feathers stood on end in rage. "This is an act of war. I told you all that humans could not be trusted. Now they show their true colors. They are invaders, conquerors, no better than the ancient Krell horde." She activated her own communication panel. "Security Fleet Command. This is Counselor Thexra. Engage the human vessels immediately. Show them the price of threatening the assembly." Vorn tried to countermand the order, but it was too late. The station's defensive fleet, consisting of 30 ships from various member species, powered up their weapons and moved to intercept the humans. On the Defiance Bridge, tactical alerts began sounding. "Admiral, the station's defense fleet is moving to engage." Sarah had expected this. Some species would shoot first and think later. "All ships. Defensive formation, Delta. Target weapons systems only. No casualties if possible. Show them what we can do." The battle was brief and one-sided. Human ships moved with coordination that seemed almost impossible. They had trained together for decades, developing tactics that emphasized teamwork over individual glory. When the first alien ship fired, 3 human vessels were already in position to disable it with precision shots to its weapon arrays. One by one, the defending ships found themselves outmaneuvered and disarmed. Human targeting was surgical. They destroyed gun batteries, but left life support systems intact. They disabled engines but did not rupture hulls. Within 15 minutes, the entire defensive fleet floated helplessly, their crews alive, but their ships unable to fight. Inside the assembly station, delegates watched in horror and disbelief. The humans had just destroyed their defensive fleet without killing a single person. It was a demonstration of capability and restraint that none of them had expected. "Prepare Marines for boarding action," Sarah ordered. "Remember the rules of engagement. Minimal force. No casualties, unless absolutely necessary. Treat their people the way we would want ours treated." 6 assault shuttles launched from the human fleet. They approached the station from different angles, moving too fast for the station's remaining defensive systems to track. Magnetic clamps seized hull sections, and cutting torches began working on entry points. Lieutenant Jin-Soo Kim checked his combat suit one final time. Around him, his squad of 20 Marines prepared their weapons and equipment. Each suit was a marvel of human engineering, providing armor, strength, enhancement, and sensor systems. But Jin-Soo's orders were clear. These suits were for protection, not aggression. "Listen up," he said over the squad channel. "We are not here to hurt anyone. We secure the corridor sections. We protect the civilians. And we make our way to the assembly chamber. Anyone who resists, we stun and restrain. Anyone who runs, we let them go. Clear?" "Clear, sir," came the chorus of responses. The cutting torches finished their work. The hull section fell inward, and Marines poured through the breach. Station security was waiting, weapons raised. They fired, but human shields absorbed the shots easily. Stun rounds fired back, and the security team collapsed, unconscious but unharmed. "Secure them and move on," Jin-Soo ordered. The Marines moved through the station like a precision instrument. They encountered resistance at every major junction. But each time, the result was the same. Station defenders found themselves outmatched by human tactics and technology. Yet despite their advantage, the humans were careful. They used non-lethal weapons whenever possible. They provided medical care to anyone who was injured. They even helped evacuate civilians from dangerous areas. A young station worker named Syl huddled in a storage room with a dozen others. She was Catharian, a small species with large eyes and gentle dispositions. Her people had always been minor players in galactic politics. When the door burst open, she expected death. Instead, a human Marine looked in, his face visible through his helmet's transparent faceplate. "Is anyone hurt?" he asked in accented but understandable galactic common language. Syl shook her head, too frightened to speak. "Stay here," the Marine said gently. "We have sealed this section. You will be safe. We mean you no harm." He placed a small device by the door. "If you need medical help, press this button." Then he was gone, continuing down the corridor with his squad. Syl stared at the door in confusion. This was not how invaders were supposed to act. Jin Su and his Marines reached the final corridor leading to the assembly chamber. Here, the resistance was strongest. Elite guards from a dozen species had formed a defensive line. They had proper military equipment and training. "Last chance to stand down," Jin Su broadcast through his suit's external speakers. "We will go through you if we must, but nobody needs to die today." A guard captain stepped forward, his weapon still raised. "You violate every law of the galaxy. We cannot let you pass." Jin Su respected that. These guards were doing their duty as they understood it. "I am sorry," he said. What followed was not a battle but a demonstration. Human Marines moved with speed and precision that seemed superhuman. Flashbang grenades disabled vision and hearing. Stun rounds targeted nerve clusters. Within 30 seconds, every guard was unconscious. Within 60 seconds, every guard was stabilized and comfortable. "Stack them gently," Jin Su ordered. "Somebody check that captain." He hit his head when he fell. "Make sure he is okay." The Marines reached the massive doors of the assembly chamber. Inside, they could hear muffled shouting. The delegates had barricaded themselves, probably using furniture and whatever else they could find. Jin Su activated his communication link. "Admiral, we have reached the chamber. Awaiting orders." Sarah's voice came back calm and clear. "Proceed with breaching. Non-lethal charges only. Ambassador Park is on his way to your position. He goes in first." "Understood, Admiral." Jin Su's demolition expert placed shaped charges around the door's locking mechanism. "Charges set. Everyone clear the area." A countdown appeared on everyone's helmet display. 3, 2, 1. The charges detonated with controlled precision. The doors did not explode inward, but simply unlocked and swung open. Smoke filled the entrance. Through it, Marines took up positions on either side, weapons ready but pointed at the ceiling. Then Ambassador Min-Jun Park walked through the smoke and into the chamber. He was not wearing armor or carrying weapons. He was dressed the same as before, in his simple ambassador's clothes. Behind him, Marines stood at attention, a show of force held in perfect check. Min-Jun looked around at the delegates, many of whom had taken cover behind their seats. He saw their fear, their anger, their confusion. High Chancellor Vorn stood in the center, his staff held like a weapon. Counselor Thexera crouched behind her console, feathers flat against her body in terror. "Honorable delegates," Min-Jun said quietly into the shocked silence, "I believe we need to talk." The assembly chamber fell into a tense silence. Min-Jun Park walked slowly toward the center floor, the same spot where he had stood just an hour before. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. Behind him, the human Marines remained perfectly still at the entrance, their presence a reminder of the power humanity had just demonstrated. High Chancellor Vorn was the first to speak. His voice shook with a mixture of rage and something that might have been fear. "You have committed an act of war against the entire galactic community. Your species will pay for this crime, for generations." Min-Jun stopped walking and looked up at the ancient reptilian leader. "Have we committed war, Chancellor? Please tell me, how many of your people have we killed today?" The question hung in the air. Vorn's mouth opened, then closed. Around the chamber, delegates looked at each other with confused expressions. "Your defensive fleet was destroyed," Thexera said from behind her console, her voice sharp but uncertain. "You invaded this station with armed forces. Your defensive fleet is disabled, not destroyed," Min-Jun corrected. Every ship is intact. Every crew member is alive and will be returned safely. As for this station, Lieutenant Kim, please provide the casualty report. Jinsu stepped forward and activated his suit's display, projecting numbers into the air for all to see. 32 station security personnel stunned, all recovered and monitored. 6 civilians treated for panic attacks. 0 fatalities. 0 serious injuries. Our Minjun continued. We brought 42 warships to your doorstep. We could have destroyed this station in seconds. We could have killed everyone here. Instead, we made sure that not a single person died. Does that sound like an act of war to you? A smaller delegate, representing a species called the Mivrani, stood up slowly. Her voice was quiet. Then what is this? Why are you here? Because you would not listen, Mingjun said simply. For 50 years, we have tried diplomacy. We have followed every rule, accepted every restriction, swallowed every insult, and still, you voted to cage us like dangerous animals. You left us no choice but to force you to hear the truth. He pulled a small data device from his pocket and held it up. This contains evidence we have gathered over the past 15 years. Evidence of a conspiracy within this assembly. Evidence that the human containment protocol was never about protecting the galaxy. It was about control and exploitation. Vorn slammed his staff against the floor. You speak nonsense. The vote was legitimate. The vote was real. Minjun agreed. But it was based on lies. He activated the device, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. Communications, records, financial transactions, secret meeting notes. 12 years ago, Minjun said, his voice growing harder, the Zelthian Confederacy approached several council members with a proposal. Humanity was advancing too quickly in certain technologies. If humans were isolated, their research could be accessed without their permission. Their innovations could be copied and sold to other species. The profits would be shared among the conspirators. A Zelthian delegate jumped to his feet. Lies! This is propaganda! Minjun looked at him coldly. Your name is Counselor Zexthan. On Galactic Standard Date 3472.6, you received a payment of 3 million credits from a shell company owned by Counselor Thexra. The payment was labeled as consultation fees. 3 days later, you gave a speech in this chamber about how dangerous human expansion had become. The holographic display showed the evidence, including bank records and communication transcripts. Zexthan's face turned a darker shade. He sat down quickly without responding. Minjun turned to address the entire assembly. It was not just the Zelthians. 8 different species participated in this conspiracy. They spread fear about humanity while quietly stealing our research. They used the Assembly's legitimate concerns about our aggressive reputation to hide their theft. Thexra stood up, her feathers rising in anger. Even if this were true, it does not excuse your actions today. You have proven that humans are exactly what we feared. Violent, aggressive, willing to use military force to get what you want. Are we? Minjun asked. He gestured toward the Marines at the door. Look at them. They could kill everyone in this room in seconds. They have not. We could have arrived here guns blazing, demanding your surrender. We did not. We tried every peaceful option first. Only when you refused to listen did we resort to this. A voice spoke up from the middle rows. It belonged to a Catharian representative, one of the smaller species that rarely participated in debates. Ambassador Park, I do not understand. If you have this evidence, why not present it before the vote? We tried, Minjun said, his frustration showing. We submitted formal complaints. We requested investigations. Every time, we were told the accusations were baseless. The conspirators had positioned themselves in the right places to block any inquiries. The system protected itself. He walked in a slow circle, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. Do you know what we discovered during our investigation? Humanity was not the first species targeted this way. 70 years ago, the Catharians tried to open new trade routes. They were blocked by regulations that mysteriously benefited larger species. 130 years ago, the Vrin Collective developed new medical technology. Their research was classified as dangerous and confiscated. The pattern repeats throughout assembly history. Several smaller species delegates began whispering to each other. Min Jun could see recognition in their eyes. They had experienced similar treatment, but had never connected the pieces. High Chancellor Vorn stood silent, his ancient eyes studying Min Jun carefully. Finally, he spoke. Let us say your evidence is real. Let us say a conspiracy existed. What do you want from us now? Revenge? Punishment? Min Jun shook his head. We want what we always wanted. A fair chance. A place in this community as equals, not as prisoners or victims. We want the blockade removed. Immediately. We want the conspirators held accountable. And we want reforms to prevent this from happening again. You hold all the power here. Thexra said bitterly. Why should we believe you will not simply conquer us all? Thank you for. With Resvermain 2-3. Because we could have done that already, Min Jun replied. We came to force a conversation that should have happened years ago. He pulled out another device. This is a proposed charter. We call it the Covenant of Stars. It establishes clear rules for the assembly, protections for smaller species, transparency requirements for major decisions, independent oversight committees. No species should have the power to cage another without overwhelming evidence of genuine threat. Vorn took the device and began reading. His expression remained neutral, but his tail, which in his species indicated emotional state, was moving in a way that suggested surprise. You have thought about this carefully, Vorn said. We have had 50 years to think about it, Min Jun answered. We have watched how this assembly works. We have seen its flaws and its strengths. We do not want to destroy it. We want to fix it. A long moment of silence followed. Then a delegate from the Mivrani species stood up. I wish to speak. My people have watched today's events with great interest. We are a small species. I thank you for watching. I fanned. We have little power in this assembly. But we recognize courage when we see it. She looked directly at Min Jun. Humanity came here with weapons, but chose mercy. They came with power but asked for justice. I support their proposal. End quote. End quote. End quote. Another voice joined in, this time from a Vrin representative. My people also support reform. We have suffered from the same type of exploitation Ambassador Park describes. More voices began speaking. Not all were supportive. Some species, particularly the larger ones, who benefited from the current system, remained hostile. But something had shifted. The smaller species, those who had been silent for so long, were finding their voices. Thexra looked around in disbelief. You are all fools. The humans have a fleet of warships aimed at this station. They are forcing you to agree through intimidation. Are they? The Mivrani delegate asked. Admiral Chen gave us a choice. They have not threatened civilians. They have not made demands beyond basic fairness. If this is intimidation, it is the gentlest intimidation I have ever seen. Vorn raised his staff for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke carefully. What you have done today, Ambassador Park, walks a very thin line. You have used force to achieve political goals. Many will see this as unforgivable. I know, Min Jun said, but I believe history will judge us by what we did with our power. We could have taken revenge for 50 years of prejudice. We could have destroyed those who conspired against us. We chose not to. We are asking for a conversation, not demanding surrender. Bon. The High Chancellor looked old and tired. I have led this assembly for 140 years. I have seen wars and peace, growth and decline. I have made mistakes, and I have made correct choices. Today, I must decide which of those this is. He looked down at Minjun from his high seat. I am going to call for a vote. Not on your charter, not yet. First, we will vote on the immediate removal of the blockade around Earth. Then, we will vote on whether to hear your full proposal for reform. And if the votes fail? Minjun asked. Then we will discover what humanity truly is. Vorn said gravely. Will you accept democracy? Or will you impose your will by force? Minjun felt the weight of billions of lives in that question. He thought about Admiral Chen waiting in orbit, weapons armed. He thought about the Marines behind him, ready to follow whatever orders came. He thought about Earth, isolated and waiting. We will accept the vote, he said finally. Even if it goes against us. Because we are not here to prove we can fight. We are here to prove we deserve to be treated as equals. Vorn nodded slowly. Then, let us vote. News of what happened at the Galactic Central Assembly spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched the recordings. They saw the human fleet appear from nowhere. They saw the brief battle, where no one died. They saw Ambassador Park walk into the chamber and present his evidence. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. High Chancellor Vorn stood at his position, his voice echoing through the chamber. The first vote is on the immediate removal of the Human Containment Protocol blockade. All delegates may cast their votes now. The voting system activated. Each delegate's console lit up with options: approve, deny, or abstain. Throughout the chamber, representatives made their choices. Some voted quickly, their minds already made up. Others hesitated, fingers hovering over their controls. On the Defiant, Admiral Sarah Chen watched her tactical display. Her ships remained in formation around the station, weapons armed, but not targeting. Her crew was quiet, tension thick in the air. They all knew what was at stake. Admiral, her communications officer said softly, we are receiving messages from Earth. Citizens are gathering in public spaces everywhere. They are watching the vote. 2. Admiral. Sarah nodded but said nothing. What could she say? The fate of their entire species rested on alien politicians who had already voted to cage humanity once. If the vote failed, she would have to make impossible choices. Use force to free Earth? That would make humans into the monsters the galaxy feared. Accept the blockade? That would slowly kill her people. In the assembly chamber, the voting timer counted down. Minjun watched the display that showed the vote totals, though they were hidden until the final moment. His hands were steady, but inside he felt like he was falling. He had gambled everything on this moment. Beside him, Lieutenant Jinsu and his Marines stood at attention. They looked calm, professional, ready for anything. But Minjun knew they were human too. They had families on Earth, friends, lives they wanted to return to. They were all trapped in this moment together. The timer reached 0. The votes were locked in. High Chancellor Vorn's console showed him the results before anyone else. His face remained carefully neutral as he read them. The results are as follows, Vorn said. 24 votes in favor of removing the blockade. 20 votes against. 3 abstentions. The chamber erupted in noise. The blockade removal had passed, but barely. Minjun felt his knees go weak with relief. They had done it. Earth would be free. But Councillor Thexra was already shouting over the chaos. This is a disgrace. The vote was made under duress, with human warships threatening us. It is not legitimate. Well, several other delegates echoed her protests. The chamber divided quickly. Those who had voted yes defended their choice. Those who voted no demanded the vote be thrown out. In the middle, the 3 who abstained looked uncomfortable, as if they wanted to be anywhere else. Vorn slammed his staff down repeatedly until order returned. The vote stands. Whatever pressure we may feel, the voting system itself was not compromised. Each delegate made their choice freely. Voting cis. All is known. Free? Thexra's feathers stood straight up in rage. With guns pointed at our heads? You call this free? The guns are pointed at walls, not heads, the Mivrani delegate said quietly. The humans have threatened no one. They have hurt no one. They simply refuse to be ignored any longer. A new voice joined the debate, broadcast from outside the station. Screens throughout the chamber activated, showing a face that many recognized. It was Counselor Zexthan, the Zelthian who had been exposed as part of the conspiracy. But he was not in the chamber anymore. He was aboard his personal ship, fleeing the station. You are all fools, Zexthan said, his image glitching as he entered faster than light travel. The humans are dangerous. They have proven it today. They will not stop with removing the blockade. They will take everything. Then his signal cut out as his ship jumped away. Two other conspirator delegates had also fled during the chaos of the vote. The remaining members of the conspiracy sat in their seats, looking pale and trapped. Vorn looked at them with disappointment. Those who conspired against humanity and other species will face trial. Those who fled will be pursued. The Assembly's justice may be slow, but it is thorough. Minjun stepped forward. Chancellor, we do not seek harsh punishment. We want accountability. Yes, but we also want to move forward. If those who conspired acknowledge their crimes and help us reform the system, we would support mercy over revenge. Thexra laughed, a harsh sound. Of course you would. Because you humans want to look noble. You want the galaxy to see you as heroes, instead of the invaders you truly are. We want the galaxy to see us as we are. Min Jun replied. Imperfect. Sometimes aggressive, but trying to do the right thing, just like every other species here. An older delegate from the Vrin collective stood slowly. Her species was known for their medical expertise and their long memories. I have served in this assembly for 50 years. In that time, I have watched it fail my people and others repeatedly. Ambassador Park's proposal for reform is not perfect, but it is necessary. I move that we schedule a full session to discuss the Covenant of Stars in detail. I second that motion, the Mivrani delegate said immediately. Vorn looked around the chamber. All in favor? This vote was faster. 30 votes in favor. Only 12 against. 5 abstentions. The galaxy was ready to at least discuss change. But outside the assembly station, the real test was beginning. News networks across thousands of worlds were analyzing the humans' actions. On some planets, the reaction was positive. Humans were seen as brave reformers, standing up against a corrupt system. On other worlds, especially those of the larger, more powerful species, humans were viewed as dangerous terrorists who had attacked the seat of galactic government. In the assembly chamber, a young clerk named Syl watched everything with wide eyes. She was Catharian, and she remembered the human marine who had checked on her and the other civilians during the invasion. He had been so careful, so respectful. He could have hurt them easily, but he chose not to. Syl had spent her whole life believing what she was told about different species. Humans were aggressive and dangerous. The assembly always knew best. Larger species deserved their power because they were wiser. But today, she had seen something different. She had seen humans show restraint when they had overwhelming power. She had seen small species like her own finding their voices. She had seen the assembly's leaders forced to face uncomfortable truths. As the session continued, Admiral Chen received a coded message from Earth's government. You are authorized to begin fleet withdrawal. The blockade is coming down. Well done, Admiral. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. All ships, begin withdrawal to safe distance. Maintain defensive posture, but stand down from combat readiness. On the bridge, her crew let out a collective sigh of relief. They had succeeded without firing a shot in anger. They had freed Earth without becoming the monsters others feared. But Sarah knew the hardest part was just beginning. The galaxy had seen human power today. Some would respect it. Others would fear it. Some would try to match it. The balance had shifted. And nobody knew exactly what would come next. In the assembly chamber, the session finally ended after 8 more hours of debate. Delegates were exhausted, emotions raw from the day's events. As they prepared to leave, many noticed something strange. The human Marines who had stormed the station were now helping with repairs. They worked alongside station crew, fixing doors they had breached, restoring systems they had disabled. One Marine, his helmet off, showed a station technician the proper way to reset a security panel. Another helped carry an injured guard to the medical bay, treating him with gentle care. They were not acting like conquerors. They were acting like people who regretted the necessity of what they had done. Thexra watched this with narrowed eyes. She could not understand it. Humans had all the power. They had won. Why were they being so soft? It made no sense to her. In her species' history, the strong dominated the weak. As she left the chamber, a group of smaller species delegates approached her. Their faces were hard. "You lied to us," the Mivrani delegate said. "You told us humans were dangerous. You were right, but not in the way you meant. They are dangerous to people like you who abuse power." Number 1. Thexera tried to respond, but they turned away without listening. She realized in that moment that her influence had crumbled. The smaller species had found hope in humanity's actions. They would not be silent anymore. High Chancellor Vorn returned to his private quarters, feeling every one of his many years. He poured himself a drink from his homeworld and stood by the window, looking out at the human fleet now withdrawing to a respectful distance. He had seen much in his long life, but today had been unique. Humans had done something he never expected. They had shown mercy when they did not have to. They had asked for justice instead of taking revenge. He did not know if their covenant of stars would work. He did not know if the reforms they proposed would solve all problems. But he knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy had just learned that humanity was not what anyone expected. They were not the perfect, peaceful species of idealistic dreams. But they were also not the violent monsters of fearful nightmares. They were something in between, something complicated and human. And that, Vorn thought, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. 6 months had passed since the day humans stormed the Galactic Central Assembly. The station had been repaired, its scars hidden but not forgotten. The galaxy had changed in ways both large and small, and today would mark another turning point. Minjun Park stood in his quarters, adjusting his collar for the 3rd time. His reflection in the mirror showed a man who had aged during the past half-year. More gray hair, deeper lines around his eyes. But there was something else too. A sense of peace that had not been there before. "Stop fidgeting," his wife Jihei said through the video call from Earth. "You look fine. Better than fine. You look like someone who changed the galaxy." "I feel like someone who got lucky," Minjun replied. "So many things could have gone wrong, but they did not. Now go. History is waiting for you." The walk to the assembly chamber felt different this time. Station workers nodded respectfully as he passed. Some even smiled. It was a far cry from 6 months ago, when many had viewed him with suspicion or fear. The chamber itself had been reorganized. The old system where larger species sat in higher positions was gone. Now, all delegates sat in a circular arrangement at the same level. It was a small change, but symbolic. No species was above another anymore. High Chancellor Vorn called the session to order. His voice was strong despite his age. "Today, we gather to mark the official ratification of the Covenant of Stars. After 6 months of debate, revision, and compromise, 42 species have agreed to the new charter. 5 species have chosen not to participate and have left the assembly. Thexra's species was among those 5. She had refused to accept the reforms, calling them human manipulation. Her government had recalled her and withdrawn from galactic politics. 3 other major species had followed. It was a loss, but not an unexpected one. Ambassador Park, Vorn said, as the primary author of the covenant. Would you address the assembly? Minjun walked to the central floor, the same spot where everything had begun. 6 months ago, I stood here as a desperate man, representing a desperate people. Today I stand here with hope. The covenant of stars is not perfect. We all know that. But it represents something important. It represents the choice to be better. He looked around at the faces watching him. Some were friendly. Others were neutral. A few were still hostile. That was fine. Change did not require everyone to agree. Just enough people to make it possible. The new charter establishes several key principles, Minjun continued. Independent oversight committees to prevent corruption. Protection for smaller species against exploitation. Transparent decision-making processes. Equal representation regardless of species size or power. And most importantly, clear rules for when containment or isolation can be used against any species. A Vrin delegate stood. Under the new rules, the human containment protocol would never have been legal. The evidence requirements are too high. 1. That is correct, Minjun agreed. And that is intentional. Caging an entire species should be nearly impossible. It should require overwhelming proof of immediate threat, not just fear or convenience. The Mivrani delegate raised her hand. What about the conspirators? The trials concluded last month. Many received light sentences. Does humanity accept this? It was a fair question. Of the 8 species involved in the conspiracy, only 3 had faced serious consequences. Financial penalties, mostly, and removal from leadership positions. Some humans had been angry, wanting harsher punishment. But Minjun and Earth's government had chosen a different path. We accept it, Minjun said, because the goal was never revenge. The goal was to fix the system that allowed the conspiracy to happen. We punish the crime, but we also forgive and move forward. That is how we build something lasting. An older delegate from a species called the Thorian stood slowly. His people had been neutral during the original crisis, neither supporting nor opposing humanity. I have a question that many in the galaxy are asking. Now that humans have shown their military power, what will you do with it? Will you seek to dominate others as some fear? Minjun had expected this question. It was the one that haunted every discussion about humanity's future in the galaxy. We will defend ourselves if attacked. We will protect our allies if they request help, but we will not seek to conquer or dominate. That is not who we are. How can we believe that? The Thorian asked. Power corrupts. It is a universal truth across all species. Ask, 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 ask. You are right, Minjun said, surprising everyone. Power does corrupt. That is why we propose the Covenant's mutual defense and oversight provisions. If humanity ever abuses our power, the Assembly can act against us just as they would against any species. We wrote ourselves into the same rules as everyone else. Admiral Sarah Chen, who had been invited to attend as an observer, stood from her seat in the gallery. May I speak, Chancellor? Vorn nodded. The Admiral may address the Assembly. Sarah walked down to stand beside Minjun. She was still in uniform, though her rank insignia were covered with a diplomatic sash. I commanded the fleet that surrounded this station. I gave the orders that many of you saw as threatening. I want you to understand why we did what we did. She paused, gathering her thoughts. My daughter is 14 years old. She wants to be a xenobiologist, to study alien life across the galaxy. When the blockade was put in place, she cried, not because she was scared, but because her dream was being taken away. She asked me why the galaxy hated us. The chamber was silent. Sarah's voice remained steady, but emotion crept into it. I could not answer her. I did not know why. We had tried so hard to be good neighbors. We followed rules. We shared knowledge. We respected boundaries. And still, we were judged as monsters. The blockade was not just a political decision. It was a prison sentence for 8 billion people who had done nothing wrong. She looked around at the assembled delegates. That is why we came here. Not for conquest. Not for revenge. We came because we had children like my daughter, who deserved a chance to live free. We came because sometimes the only way to make people listen is to make them unable to ignore you. A younger delegate, someone Min Jun did not recognize, stood up. But you could have killed us all. You had that power. How do we trust that you will never use it? You cannot, Sarah said bluntly, just as we cannot trust that you will never try to cage us again. Trust is not about certainty. It is about choosing to believe in someone despite uncertainty. We are asking you to trust that our restraint 6 months ago reflects who we truly are. And we are choosing to trust that the galaxy can change. The session continued for hours. Delegates asked questions, raised concerns, proposed minor amendments. It was boring, procedural work. But it was also democracy in action. Every species having their say, working together to build something better than what came before. During a break, Sil approached Min Jun nervously. The young Therian clerk had watched every session of the assembly since the human action. She had seen how delegates who once ignored her species now listened when they spoke. Small changes, but meaningful ones. Ambassador Park, she said quietly, I wanted to thank you. My people are being heard now. We have always been too small, too weak to matter. But after what you did, everything changed. Min Jun smiled at her. Your people are not weak, Sil. You never were. You just needed someone to prove that strength is not the only thing that matters. Will you really help us? She asked. Humanity promised to share technology with smaller species. My government is hoping to receive medical technology that could cure a disease affecting our children. We will help, Min Jun assured her. The technology sharing program begins next month. Your world is on the list. Tears formed in Sil's large eyes. Our children will live. Because of you. No, Min Jun said gently. They will live. Because we all chose to build something better together. When the session resumed, High Chancellor Vorn called for the final ceremonial vote. All species who wish to join the Covenant of Stars, indicate your agreement. 42 votes appeared instantly. 42 species choosing to move forward together. It was not all of them. Some had left. Others might return eventually. But it was enough. Then, by the authority granted to me as High Chancellor, I declare the Covenant of Stars ratified and effective immediately. Vorn paused. Then added something, not in the formal script. And I declare this assembly reformed. Our first order of business under the new charter is to elect representatives to the new oversight committees. Nominations are open. What followed was remarkable. Smaller species began nominating their own members for positions that had always been held by larger, more powerful species. The Mivrani delegate nominated a Catharian for the Ethics Oversight Committee. A Vrin representative nominated a human for the Technology Sharing Board. For the first time in assembly history, power was being genuinely distributed rather than concentrated. It would not be perfect. There would be struggles and setbacks. But the direction was clear. The session finally ended as station night cycles began. Delegates filed out slowly, many stopping to speak with colleagues from other species. Old alliances were being tested. New friendships were forming. The galaxy was reshaping itself. Min Jun found Admiral Chen in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The human fleet had returned to Earth, but a small diplomatic guard remained. 5 ships that rotated duties. We did it, Sarah said quietly. We had no choice, Minjun replied. Sometimes, the right thing is also the terrifying thing. Do you think it will last? The reforms? The covenant? All of it? Minjun considered the question. I think it will last as long as we remember why we fought for it. The moment we forget, the moment we become comfortable with power, that is when it will start to crumble. Sarah nodded. Then we better make sure humanity never forgets. Far across the galaxy, on Earth, celebrations were underway. The blockade was gone. The covenant was ratified. Humanity had won, not through conquest, but through courage. In Seoul, Minjun's daughter was accepted into a prestigious xenobiology program on an alien world. In New York, a human company signed its first contract to share medical technology with the Catharians. In Mumbai, scientists began collaborating with Vrin researchers on projects that would benefit both species, and on the assembly station, in a small clerk's office, Sil updated the official records. For the first time in galactic history, the entry for humanity's status read not contained or probationary, but simply member, species, full rights. She smiled as she saved the file. Change had come to the galaxy. It had arrived on warships and with weapons, but it had succeeded through mercy and principle. The galaxy had watched in horror as humans stormed the assembly, but now they watched with something else. Hope, respect, and for some, even friendship. Minjun stood in the observation deck for a long time, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, his wife was watching the same stars from Earth. His children were preparing for futures that had almost been stolen from them. 8 billion humans were breathing easier, dreaming bigger. He had done what he set out to do. Not perfectly, not without cost, but humanity was free, and the galaxy was a little more just than before. That was enough. The galaxy had learned what humans truly were. Not monsters, not saints, just people who refused to accept injustice, who chose mercy when they could have chosen vengeance, who believed that even the smallest species deserved dignity and freedom. As the stars shined in the darkness, Minjun Park smiled. The work was not done. It would never truly be done. But for the first time in 50 years, he felt that humanity's future among the stars was secure, and that was worth everything they had risked.